The presenting sponsor of Andrew Talks to Chefs is Mies. Mies is the chef-created recipe operating system that makes your professional kitchen life easier with unprecedented tools for recording, scaling, analyzing, costing, and teaching recipes, much of it at the press of a virtual button. Learn more at getmeez.com/Andrew. That's GETMeez.com/Andrew. This episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs is supported in part by San Pellegrino Sparkling Natural Mineral Water. For the past 125 years, San Pellegrino has supported the art of fine dining in all of its ever-changing forms and nurtured the next generation of chefs through resources and mentorship. To learn more, visit sanpellegrino.com.
I'm Massimo Bottura.
This is Amanda Cohen.
This is David Kinch.
This is Mike Anthony.
This is Hooni Kim.
This is Amanda Freitag.
This is Richard Blaze.
This is Paul Kahn.
This is Curtis Stone.
This is Stephen Harris.
This is Missy Robbins.
And you're listening to Andrew Talks to Chefs.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is Andrew Talks to Chefs. I am your host, Andrew Friedman, and I come here today to pay tribute to my friend, the late Tom Valenti, who very sadly and suddenly passed away in New Jersey last week after a brief illness. If you follow the industry on social media, if you read the New York Times, you might have seen the obituary. But if you are plugged in any of the various ways one can be plugged in these days, then you no doubt are aware that we lost Tom last week. And you are probably also aware of how absolutely loved he was among various communities, the chef community, of course, also the dining community of New York City. He also had a wide network of friends, many of them dating back to his younger years, high school and before that. And I am honored to have counted myself among those people. There's not a whole lot I can add, and I'm not even going to try in the way of facts. There's a couple of good obituaries out there. The one in the New York Times was particularly good, I thought, and also very good at capturing what made Tom's food so special. I will link to that in the episode notes for today's show if you would like to read up on Tom. But you know, if you listen to this show, then you probably know that when we lose someone in the industry, it's often the case that I have some recorded interview with them. Oftentimes it is an interview from when I was doing the research for my book, Chefs, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. And I do have an interview with Tom from that project. It's very noisy. It was done in a restaurant on my old digital tape recorder. The sound quality was terrible. And then something occurred to me that I had just completely forgotten about. But not long before COVID, Tom and I sat down at the restaurant where he was the chef at the time, and that was the Oxbow Tavern on the Upper West Side. And we started to record an interview for this podcast. It was using all my podcast equipment. It was meant to air on this show. We spent about an hour together, and as often is the case, we went off on a lot of tangents. For some reason, I don't say it in the interview, and I can't remember what it was. I have no clue. I had to leave, and we were going to continue the interview, and I'm not sure the exact date that we sat down to do that, but I have to think it could not have been much before the COVID shutdown, because we never did do it, and by the time we were all socializing again, to be honest, I had forgotten about it. I don't know whether or not he did and was just too polite to bring it up, but I wish we obviously had finished it. Anyway, I'm going to share that in just a minute after just a few remarks, and I'm going to try to keep this to things that I have not read elsewhere, because I'm eager for you all to hear the interview. I hope that hearing his voice will put a smile on the face of his friends. I was a little hesitant to listen to it as close after his death as I did, but I found it strangely comforting and enjoyable. I laughed a few times, and I hope that people who knew him will have a similar reaction. And I hope that those of you out there who did not know of him, or maybe didn't know of him, will get a sense of his personality, because Tom was a very special guy. He was sweet, warm, funny. And as Ruth Reichel once wrote in the New York Times, he was absolutely blessed with the ability to make food taste great. I think I actually quote that line in the interview that you're going to hear in a minute. So, what can I add to what you've already read about Tom? Well, a couple of things. One, just because it gives such a sense of our relationship and of him, I think. When he was at a restaurant called Cascabel in the 1990s, I was the restaurant's publicist. And one of the things I did periodically was I would go down to the restaurant. The restaurant was in Soho. It was actually in the space where Osteria Marini was, the Alta Marea Group's restaurant that some of you may know, at 218 Lafayette Street. I would come down in a suit and tie because I was a working professional, and Tom would be in the kitchen. And this is maybe a good place for me to mention someone who deserves mention in any conversation about Tom. But Scott Verricchio, who was a childhood friend of Tom's, who, when he switched careers, Tom actually invited him into his kitchen. Scott became a very capable cook, and then an excellent cook, and then a chef. He was instrumental in running many of the restaurant kitchens Tom was at over the years. And Scott now has his own restaurant, the Citrus Grill House in Vero Beach. He's actually been a guest on the show twice, I believe, maybe even 3 times in the lifespan of this show. He's a friend of mine at this point for a very long time. Oftentimes, when it was time for us to go into the dining room, the restaurant did not serve lunch. So we would go in the dining room, and that's when we were supposed to brainstorm. And more often than not, Tom would say to me, "I don't feel like working today." And I would say, "Me neither." And he would say, "Let's go smoke cigarettes." And don't smoke. Should not smoke, people out there. But we would go sit in the dining room. We were each drinking Pellegrino out of the bottle and smoke cigarettes. And then inevitably, I would have to reschedule our meeting to another day. But those were some of my most fun memories of my short, and what I always describe as my short and unhappy life as a publicist. Nothing against the profession. It was not for me, although I made some really good friends doing it. And then after I made the leap to writing, which I started as a ghostwriter on chef cookbooks, Tom was among the few people who took a chance on me early on. And I have to say, and this is I pulled these off the shelf today, but you won't be able to see this if you're listening to the audio show, but it's okay. But our first book, oh wait, I have to do this crazy, can you guys see this? I didn't count on this. That's not going to work, so I am going to superimpose pictures of the books that I'll grab after this interview. Anyway, our first book was Welcome to My Kitchen. It has most of his recipes that put him on the map. It's a book that I think really captured his voice well. It was something he and I worked very hard on. It is also a book that I have to say I was surprised and delighted, but when the news broke about his passing, I don't want to name drop here, but I got a text from one of the more well-known, celebrated, and loved chefs in the country asking if I could put in their hands a copy of the book because they didn't have it. And I know Tom would have been very honored by that request. And if that chef is listening, then you know who you are. And our second book, and I'm a little sad I can't hold this up because of the mechanics of the camera I'm using, which I have a background superimposed, which functions like a green screen. So I'm showing an image now of Tom Valenti's book, Soup, Stews, and One Pot Meals. That was our second book. That was a time where he had to come up with new dishes for the book. And I should say we tested all of these books together. That's something I rarely did side by side with the chefs I worked with because, to be honest, I just didn't have the chops to cook with those people, to cook their restaurant food. Tom's food, and if you haven't read about it or if you didn't know it yourself, you can find this out by reading up on him. But Tom's food was, it was absolutely delicious. It was informed by excellent technique, but the style of it was very homey. It was very approachable, and it was something that anybody really could cook. So he and I tested side by side. He never made me feel like an inferior cook. He never made fun of me for my mistakes. And he even let me, because of the nature of the food, create or contribute some recipes to the book. One of them actually has me and my wife Caitlin's name on it. It's a soppressata lasagna that we had come up with at home, and he wanted to put it in the book, so we put it in the book. Also, it is, again, I wish I could show you the book. It's one of the few books that I've worked on that is absolutely covered with stains and grease and kitchen debris because I use it all the time. That's the book of the three we did that I hear the most still from people. My friend Dan Saltstein, the writer, actually in an Instagram comment the other day mentioned that he uses that book all the time. 20 years on, I still hear about that book from people constantly. And then the last book we did was You Don't Have to Be Diabetic to Love This Cookbook. That was actually a book that came to Tom. Suzanne Rafer, an editor at Workman, wanted to do a book for people with diabetes, a cookbook, and approached Tom, who did live with diabetes. Of course, Tom sent up the bat signal and I joined him again for that book. But just wonderful times that the two of us had. He was really funny and we always had a great time. And we also socialized a ton in between and long after we had stopped writing books together. I also have to mention, whenever he would call and catch me in the car, I would always ask if I could put him on speakerphone because nobody made my wife Caitlin laugh more than Tom Valenti did. Often it was just by making silly sounds. If I did any of them right now, you would not see the humor. It would be utterly lost on you. But it was the delivery, it was the connection, he could just make her laugh like nobody else. The other thing I want to mention, because I think it is interesting, because I think these two populations are probably the best judges of character. Tom had a really easy way with people. Everyone seemed to like him. We would go to restaurants that I had been frequenting for years, that he hadn't been to before in some cases, and the whole staff would be like in love with Tom and joking with Tom and touching Tom on the shoulder. And I was like, what am I doing wrong that I've been here 20 times and I don't have this relationship? And that was just kind of the energy he had. It was quite something. It was not, it was nothing, it was not an affectation. It was how he is. I imagine it's how he probably was going all the way back to childhood. But in addition to his connection with adults, children absolutely loved Tom in the few times I saw them together. And one of those children, I never forgot this moment, was when my kid brother Mike came to town when he was very young. He's technically my half-brother. I rarely refer to him that way. I usually just call him my brother, but we do have a huge age gap between us. And he came to visit me in New York once. And the first person he ever met in New York City was I had to put in an appearance. This is when I was representing Tom at an event at the Puck Building in Lower Manhattan. And I took Mike with me. He was freshly arrived from the airport. He was maybe 11 or 12 years old. And we were walking around this very ornately decorated series of rooms on the ground floor of the Puck Building. And when Tom saw him, he went into again, I'm not going to do it. It just won't translate. But he went into a very exaggerated, he kind of clicked his heels together, stood up at attention, did a big salute. And my brother was putty in his hands, absolute putty in his hands. And the other population, other than children that are great judges of characters, and if you have a pet, you know this, are dogs. Dogs are amazing judges of character, and my dog absolutely loved Tom, who also taught me how easy it is to make a dog to howl. And that is something he would do whenever he came into our house, is start talking to our dog by howling with the dog. I didn't know you could do that. First time he met my dog, he came in, he did that, and then every time Tom showed up, the dog would absolutely go bananas. Anyway, those are some random thoughts. Again, I do not want to belabor this intro because I do want you to hear this interview. So here's what happened. I went to the Oxbow Tavern. I believe it was in 2020, bizarrely, because I am an absolute nut for logging dates and even times and things like that. There was no date or time on this interview, but I'm pretty sure it was in the first 2 or 3 months, not even, first 2 months of 2020. It was, as I say, at the Oxbow Tavern on the Upper West Side where Tom was the chef. We decided to do the interview over lunch. And we only, like I say, we only got through the very beginnings of his career. but it talks a little bit about how he started cooking. It talks about the evolution of his style. It talks about a time that I still, even knowing the two of them as well as I do, I still cannot fathom that he was the first sous chef for Alfred Portali at the Gotham Bar and Grill, because they seem so different to me in every possible way. And they're both dear friends of mine, but I was not around the scene at that time, and I've never been able to picture it, but we talk about that. We talk a little bit about what was going on in the restaurant world in the early days, and we talk about a really interesting job. This comes toward the end of the interview, and I do want you to stay for it. Early in his career, he had a 2-year gig as a private chef, and we talk about that. And there's various other things in there, but mainly I just wanted you all to spend, I think as this interview is cut, it's only about 35 minutes, but I wanted you to hear his voice, to get a sense of the guy, and to get an appreciation for who he was. And I do think that comes through here, even though we never completed this interview. I need to thank, because we now are a video podcast, although you may be listening to this somewhere. We are on YouTube and Spotify and need to get caught up over on Apple, where they're now allowing videos. But there are some photos that are running somewhat randomly because they don't really illustrate what's happening in the interview. But I wanted you all to have something to look at other than just one still photo. I reached out to the community for some photographs yesterday, and a few people, I'm happy to say, answered the call. Scott Verricchio, Lauren Bloomberg, Drew Naporant, Kate Headings, and Bill Telepan. If I left anyone out, I apologize. But these photos are they're not professional photos in most cases. I did a little bit of doctoring where I could, but as I say, I just wanted you to have some images that you could look at as you were listening, if you are doing that on YouTube or Spotify. And I think that's all I need to say about it. Again, I would encourage you to go visit the episode page for today's show and click through and read the New York Times obituary of Tom. I'm not going to drop any ads in the middle of this conversation, and I am not going to do an outro at the end. I'm just going to let the interview run its course, and then we will wrap the show with a little of our traditional music, and I will see you back here for our next interview. And with that, this is a conversation recorded, I believe, in the first 2 months of 2020 with my late friend, the wonderful Tom Valenti. Here you go.
It's gonna take a prolonged arrangement of the senses to make some sense of this.
Can I just get a sound check, please?
Womp bombaloo bomba womp bamboo.
You're a natural.
Tutti frutti, oh Rudy.
So I don't know if you've ever heard the show. I do the intros later, so we're just talking.
All
And I
right.
do edit, so if there's anything you don't want to have
Okay.
answer or whatever.
Hey,
Tom,
Andrew.
have you done the math on how long we've been having sessions like this?
Math like that
Is the math
scares
scary?
me. It scares me.
Okay. Do you remember the first time we met?
I don't remember what I had for breakfast. Help me out here.
I was a publicist. I know,
Cascabel.
but you were not yet at Cascabel. I had been the PR person for Cascabel.
That's right. I was
The
still
chef-
at Alison on Dominick Street.
You were in between. Oh, no,
Uh-huh.
you were at Alison on Dominick
Yes.
Street where you got famous. The Cascabel was no longer operating as a restaurant. Rebecca Charles
Dixie was there, right?
had left the restaurant.
Right.
The restaurant was operating basically as a bar at night, but no food.
Mm-hmm.
I was friendly with the owner, with John. And one night I get a phone call. I was still at work. And he said, "What are you doing right now?" "Well, I want you to come by. I'm hiring Tom Valenti away from Alison on Dominick Street." And I said, "You've got to be kidding me." You and I had never met.
No.
I come down there. You're at the bar. In my mind's eye, you were wearing something akin to a Hawaiian shirt. It was that time of year. You were drinking a beer.
Yeah.
There was no one else in the restaurant except John.
Yeah.
You had just been through some kind of like credit card fraud, or maybe it was identity theft.
I remember what it was. I was.
This
in
was
the
our first
process-
conversation ever.
That's right. I was in the process of purchasing my house in the Catskills. And during the credit process, one of my social security numbers,
Mm-hmm.
a 9, was inverted to a 6.
Okay.
And I had to jump through hoops because the bank called me and said, well, Mr. Valenti, we're sorry, but we can't approve your mortgage. And I was like, well, why? How could that be?
Right.
And they were like, well, you filed for bankruptcy 3 times. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks anyway, goodbye. And I hung up the phone, and then I was like, wait a minute. I never filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
You remember that. Again, I don't remember what I had for breakfast.
Well, as Eddie Murphy says in Trading Places, this kind of shit happens to you all the time.
Yeah.
Because what's happened to you? I called you said I want to come by and lay down some audio with you. And what did you tell me? 2 car accidents, 2 not even accidents, 2 people like sideswiped you in the last week or something?
Yeah, one hit my SUV, the other one hit my midlife crisis car.
I don't even know what is your midlife crisis
I
car?
have an Audi TT.
You do?
And a Range Rover, yeah. And it's like, that's another story for another time.
We are sitting here, and just to give a sense, because I should do a book about this, right? Or somebody should. We mentioned Cascabel a minute ago. Most people probably don't remember that restaurant. That is 218 Lafayette Street.
That's right.
In the Village, and that is currently the home of Michael White's restaurant, Osteria Morini.
That's it.
But I love, if you talk to someone of like specifically, I think your generation, give and take maybe 10 years, you guys are like encyclopedias of restaurant spaces.
That's right.
You can if I named you an address, you could probably tell me the 6 restaurants that were there. Because one reason is it's geographically a small city.
Right.
And the other thing is you guys all look at all the same, you guys get the same alerts
It's
and
like,
go look at all the same spaces.
Case in point, Madison Avenue at 86th Street.
Yes, that's now currently another Michael. That's where Ristorante Marini is.
That's right.
No,
and
go ahead.
previously Pino Longo's restaurant.
Centolire.
Yeah.
Yes, and before that it was it Celadon? Is that what it was
Celadon,
called?
yes.
Where I never went. I just know that name. Or the Red Cat,
which used to be Chelsea Central.
where you were the chef at one point.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Rick Moonen.
Before
me.
And Bruce Willis was a bartender at one point in history.
And Patty Scialfa, Bruce Springsteen's
Oh, this I didn't know.
wife, was a waitress.
Okay, we have to pause and say thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you
We're-
for the goodies.
This is a little lunch stop.
Yeah.
We're having
all right.
lunch and that looks good.
Have some.
Ooh.
Ooh-wee.
Now that's billed on the menu as a tarte flambe.
Yeah, it's a pizza, but if you call it a tart flambe, you can charge more. For
Okay.
it.
Well, I didn't want to say it, but that is a little more cheesy than your typical tarte flambe.
It's way cheesier. It's
In a
not-
way that-
jump in there.
Maybe for dessert.
Are we still talking?
Yeah, we're going to talk.
Oh, good. All right.
Can you manage that, or should we
No.
break for 5
No,
minutes?
but there's my mother told me not to.
Should
talk
we break for
about
5 minutes?
No.
Okay. Tom, I've just always loved your trajectory. There's something I don't know about you. So you did not go to culinary school.
I did not.
You spent time working, cooking for Guy Savoy
I did
in that would be Paris.
in Paris.
When I first met you, this is how much of a dope I was about chef. Because I was just trying to pay the rent with this PR
How
job.
much of a dope you were then? Say, I'm sorry.
This would be a good time. Oh, no, I'll save it.
Ba-dum-bum.
I'll save it. But I was writing your bio. That I'd seen your old bio. It's your publicists always have to do a bio for their
Right.
clients. And I said, oh, and then you went to work for Guy Savoy. It's amazing we're still friends.
Good old
It's
guy.
amazing.
He's quite a geek.
You didn't go to cooking school. You were large. You started cooking. You were. I think you were known. If I mention you to people who've known your cooking for a long time, I mean, everyone says. I think Ruth Reichel even said it in the review of Butterfield '81 that you have this gift for seasoning. You just got this palate that is very refined, but also I think I once wrote unrestrained. Like you like big flavors.
I'm a wild man.
But you don't take them over the top. You just have this gift for knowing exactly how far you could take something before it would be sort of gauche or too much.
Yeah.
And it just makes people's palates really happy.
Thank you.
Was it that way even when you were, as I say this, didn't you used to cook chili and stuff for your buddies?
Yeah.
Like in high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you were just
Yeah.
screwing around.
It was totally screwing around. It was the 70s.
Yeah.
It was an Ivy League college town, Cornell University, Ithaca, New York.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was away a lot, and she would fill the larder. Now, in the 70s, in a college town, with no parental supervision, my friends would show up and do things that you would do in the 70s in a college town. And I would cook
And
for
that
them.
would be conducive of an appetite.
Correctamundo. Yeah. And I could be, I was making chili and I was making pizza and I was making pasta and all sorts of fun stuff. And I loved the process. I
Mhm.
love the adulation because my friends were like, "Oh, dude, this is so good," and I could have been dipping, cardboard in egg and frying it, and they would have been like, "Oh, dude, this is so amazing," for obvious reasons. But I loved cooking. I still love cooking.
And you, at least when I first got to know you, you weren't necessarily in your places till the bitter end at night, but you were unusual for an executive chef in that you were often the first guy in your kitchen in the morning. Like when I think of you, I think about, I used to live a couple of blocks from your restaurant, West. And if I would come by sometimes, I'd say, oh, let me see if Tommy's around. And like, push the front door open, go down to the kitchen. There are people, you were the only guy there. You were like making sauce, you were making things in the RoboCoupe.
Yeah.
You were starting the base of for your lamb shanks. You
Yep.
were you had the oven, the jets turned on for heat. You were often the only guy there.
And I got to tell you, that exists to this day. Listen, I didn't get into cooking. When I got into cooking, it was decidedly a blue collar field. Now chefs, friends are media stars, high visibility. But the reality is that I always felt that, like anything, laying a firm foundation every day was vital to the consistency of the restaurant. Maybe because I wasn't educated, that was the way I found my way in it, but I still do it. And quite often I get comments, well, you're at the restaurant. We were at the restaurant last night and we didn't see you there. And I was like, how's the food? Oh, the food was great. Okay, then I did my job. I'm sorry I missed you. If I come in at 2:00, most of the preparation has been done for the day. And if there is something wrong or slightly off, quite often there's not ample time to correct it.
And you don't like, people can probably hear it in your voice. You're not one of these guys who like gets off on like the adrenaline spike.
I think that I respond to it. It's not an addiction. That's food. It's, it's family. It's at the table. It's eating and drinking and having fun and creating memories.
So I think that it's a story I love because I think it really shows how small the community was back then. Your community, not the writer, although the writer
Yeah.
community was too.
Yeah.
Can you tell the story of how you ended up working as the opening sous chef, not opening sous chef, as Alfred's first sous chef, Alfred Portali,
At the Gotham
at the
Bar
Gotham
Grill.
Bar Grill? Can you explain the moment and the players in that moment?
It was kismet. It was hysterical. Alfred and his wife at the time, Helen,
Mm-hmm.
were winding up a tour of a stage in France, both at the Trois Gros Brothers and at Michel Gerard. I had just concluded my stage at Guy Savoy in Paris, and we met at Charles de Gaulle Airport, and we were on the same flight back to New York from Paris. A fellow that I had met who was a stage at Guy Savoy when I had arrived in Paris is a fellow by the name of Daniel Jonas. Daniel was in Paris at the time studying food and wine, and he is like one of the greatest palates and the greatest knowledge of any sommelier. He was with Drew Perron at Montrachet
Yeah.
and that group for many years, and he's now with Danielle Ballud.
Mm-hmm.
He knew Alfred and Helen somehow, and he ended up introducing us. So when we got back to New York, I kept running into Alfred. My first job in the city was at a place called the Perigord Park, which is on 63rd and Park Avenue. So I was the pastry chef at this place, the Perigord Park, and several blocks up the street was the Westbury Hotel. And Alfred was the saucier.
Mm-hmm.
Danielle Ballud was the sous chef. Patrice Bouilly was the executive chef.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of other guys who worked there. I think Waldy Malouf worked there.
Keller was there at one point.
Charlie Palmer worked there.
Yeah. Frank Crispo.
Frank Crispo. Oh my
Yep.
gosh.
Yep.
Talk about talent. Deep talent concentrated on one island. They needed some help with pastry at night, so I walked my way up from the Perigord Park late one afternoon after my shift, and I walked through the door, and lo and behold, Alfred Portali is prepping behind the line. So we said hello, And then time went by, and I ran into him again at Bridge Kitchen Supply,
Oh, legendary.
which was
Yeah.
a legendary spot. You could always count on seeing some friends there. I used to run into Bobby there often, but he was telling me about this project that he was working on down on 12th Street.
Yeah.
I was hired at a restaurant called Roxanne's at 8th Avenue and 18th Street at the time. So we
Yeah.
kept in touch. And the gig at Roxanne's didn't really work out for me. And I mentioned this to Alfred in passing one day, and he said, well, do you want to talk about maybe being my sous chef at the Gotham? And I said I'd love nothing more. Now at that time, when Alfred first took the helm at the Gotham, they were doing maybe 6 or 8 or 10 covers
In a room
night.
that could handle like 140 maybe?
They could handle the Colts versus the Steelers. It was huge. It was the Enormodome. But, so Alfred, who was like at the time was his style of cooking was aesthetically, he was incomparable. And he's laying these beautiful designs with fanning out a duck breast perfectly on the plate. And I'm thinking to myself, if we ever do more than 20 covers in this place, we're fucked. But we grew into it. Alfred had a vision. Jerry Kretschmer, Richard and Robert Rath, and Jeff Bliss, the owners, allowed him to do that voodoo that he does so well.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? 35 years later, the place is impenetrable.
So can you just speak to this? Because it's always been almost impossible for me to envision you as Alfred's sort of first lieutenant, right? Because Alfred is a very serious person. You guys are such a complete, personality-wise,
opposites,
polar
right?
opposites.
Yeah.
That was a place doing a huge volume, which honestly, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's the only really time in your life you worked in a place like that.
That big.
But also the style of food was so,
Exactly.
everyone talks about the visuals, right? And I to this day, when
It
people
was
find out I
exacting.
co-wrote his book, they talk about how important that book was to them. It's not because of the writing; it's because Alfred was such a big deal. But
Right.
I think you were the first one, maybe, to tell me this: that the food, there was a precision. It was not by accident, right? You didn't have the caliber of cooks you have today. You had kitchens that people were coming out of where they were used to sort of like, oh, we're doing a lamb and this, and they would just plate it however they wanted to, right? And Alfred, both to meet the demands of the volume and his visual aesthetic, he had been a jewelry designer. He was into bonsai plants as a kid
That's
and all
right,
this
that's
stuff.
right.
Each dish was almost, I think you described it to me as an illustration on the plate. It was conveyed to the team that this goes at 12 o'clock. This goes at this o'clock. The 2 pieces of
Exactly.
salmon get stacked over here,
That's
right?
exactly the point.
So that everything came out the same.
Yes.
Okay. That is so antithetical to me to what you do and how you do it. I mean, you want consistency, but your way of doing it is you come in the morning early and you do it yourself.
Yeah.
Some of it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What was that like for you? Was it
It was-
fun?
It was great fun, and it was a very natural progression for me. And I think that we came together beautifully because of the difference.
You complemented each other.
I believe absolutely. Obviously bear in mind that we both studied in Paris or in France. I didn't go to school. He did.
Yeah.
There was a big difference there.
Mm-hmm.
My aesthetic, yes, was a little more shoot from the hip, but I honored and respected what his vision was for the Gotham Bar and Grill, and I was absolutely behind him.
Yeah.
In that structure, because it couldn't have gone off any other way.
Yeah.
If there was anything open to translation
Yes.
by any one of those cooks in the kitchen,
Yes.
it would have collapsed. And there was nothing lost in flavor, although it was very much a component-driven dish by dish by dish. The discipline of cooking and the precision of cooking each of those items, when they came together on the plate, they worked beautifully.
Well, I think also something that was not unique to him, but of that style, what you called component, what this he'd said to me, is that it was interactive. You could mix and match in each bite.
Right.
What was next for you after that?
I went to Alfred and I said, I think that I need to take a breath. I had been there with him for 2 years. We had gone from doing 3 covers to 300.
It was the hottest restaurant in New York.
And it was consistently 300 covers.
Yeah.
Brian Miller anointed us with his first 3-star review, 84, 85 year.
I don't remember if it was
But-
late 84, early 85.
Yeah, but it went from 0 to 1 million overnight. And it took its toll on me just because by the nature of my position, I was the lead cook. I ran the saute station and I did the expediting, which was like, juggling a bowling ball, a chainsaw, and a big thing of cotton candy.
Yeah.
So I took a break, and Michael Whiteman and Roseanne Gold, some dear old friends, they were putting a project together up on 2nd Avenue. It was a restaurant called Cafe Greco. And Alfred knew Roseanne and Michael as well. And they reached out to Alfred after I had given notice and said that they were looking for somebody to fit that kitchen. And Alfred recommended me for the job. And so that's where I landed after my departure from the Gotham.
And where were you in your you became, I mean, the most famous example was this braised lamb shank that you did, which it sounds almost crazy that someone could get like famous for that dish. But that dish was huge. When you were at Alison on Dominick Street, that dish was like the it dish of New York City.
Yeah.
Because it flew in the face of so much other stuff, right? Which is often the case with breakout dishes. Your food became known as, people would use words like lusty, bold. That became Bobby's trademark word.
Yeah.
But where were you in your evolution when you left Gotham?
I kind of felt like I wanted to go in the 180 degrees. Small and lusty, slow cooked, as opposed to high speed. Doing 300 covers a night means 800 or 900 dishes going out of that kitchen.
Yeah.
Between appetizers, entrees, and desserts.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of recapture how I fell in love with food in the first place. It was really at my grandmother's knee. And it was all about, we didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. So consequently, a lot of the food that we had in the house when I was very young at my grandparents' house were slow cooked, cheap cuts. So that's kind of where it came back around, because I don't think you can lose with that type of cooking.
Are we talking, your background, your family background, is it 100% Italian?
Yeah.
All 4 grandparents?
Yes. My feeling, my philosophy has always been, if you can tap into a childhood memory or a taste memory in a dish, you got them. You got them hooked. What do I mean by that? Many, many, many years ago, a good friend of mine, another well-known chef, did a tarragon ice cream, and it was spectacular.
Here in New York?
Yeah. It was perfectly textured, perfectly sweet. The flavor of tarragon echoes a flavor of licorice. And so consequently, it was brilliant. Brilliant. But my perspective on it was, I so admired it, but then I'd turn around and serve a hot fudge sundae. Because if you elicited the opinion of 100 people, 99 of them would say, oh yeah, hot fudge sundae, because there's a memory associated most likely with it. So what do I mean by this? I mean that there is a dynamic and a finery associated with so many of my friends who are chefs. Alfred Portali, Tom Kalicki.
Yeah.
I was more of the homespun kind of underpinning.
So, I mean, if I look here, okay, obviously the tart flambe, there's a pizza-ish thing going on there. That's obvious. This salad, by the way, this is on your menu as a niçoise salad. There's a little pile of greens that has the green beans or the haricot vert chopped, not minced up, but cut into little pieces in
Right.
it. Cherry tomatoes, olives, and then I love this. There's little tiny, are they bliss potatoes? What are they?
Yeah.
That have been roasted,
Just little
obviously, cut into
fingerlings.
coins,
Yeah.
fingerlings, cut into coins. That's all tossed and very lightly dressed with what? Just olive oil and a
Lemon,
little vinegar,
lemon,
lemon.
olive oil, yeah.
Okay. Then next to that, there was a kind of like planked out these slices of au poivre tuna.
Rare
and,
tuna.
And then next to that was is it tomato sauce.
Yeah.
There's like a little pool of tomato sauce.
Yeah.
Okay.
And why not?
Okay. Would you apply what you just said to that?
Sure.
And in what way? That connection is not apparent to me.
Well, I mean, if you take a traditional niçoise salad, it's always used canned, oil-packed tuna. And I wanted to give it a little bit more of a something. I still love that classic combination. So the tonado comes into play because there's your oil-packed canned tuna hit, but you've got the fresh rare tuna. So it eats a little bit more like an entree.
It does. Alison on Dominick Street. What year was that? 87?
89.
89. The first time I ever heard the phrase destination restaurant was Alison on Dominick Street. It was in a pre-hot Tribeca, middle of nowhere. I was at the time working for a film producer. He and his wife were real Upper East Siders. I remember distinctly, I didn't know anything about food when I was in the film business. I stumbled into food. My childhood thing was I wanted to be in the film business.
Yeah, right. I remember.
And I was in this office and they were like, oh, we ran into so-and-so at Alison on Dominick Street last night. And I'm sitting in an office on 57th Street. I'm like, where is Dominick Street? Like, I didn't know, And then when I started reading, people referred to that as a destination restaurant, meaning a restaurant that basically it's kind of like what the Michelin definitions actually mean.
Yeah.
But basically, that was worth a special trip.
Right,
yeah, worth a trip. You're going to go out of your way just to go to this place. Talk to me about that moment. Talk to me about what it was like opening a restaurant down in, this is around the time, if anyone ever saw the movie After Hours.
Yeah,
the Martin Scorsese comedy with Griffin Dunn.
Yeah.
That was basically Tribeca, a lot of that movie.
Yeah,
like
that's
that was
true.
Tribeca. Desolate streets, old buildings, most of the stuff closed after dark. And then if you spend enough time rambling around there late at night, every 3 or 4 blocks, you'd come across one of the hottest restaurants in New York.
Yeah.
And nothing else.
Nothing else. You'd shoot a cannon down that street.
Nothing.
And not hit anybody.
And these places would be freaking packed.
Yeah. Now, we have to back to the Gotham Bar and Grill again. Because the genesis of Alison on Dominick Street began there. Alison Price was the assistant floor manager at the time that I was sous chef. As I went off to Cafe Greco in Parts North, Alison went to a restaurant called Raquel, Rakel, whose partners were Serge Raoul, the RA in Rakel, and the chef Thomas Keller, the KEL in Raquel. Alison was there for a couple of years. We had kept in touch. It was her desire to open her own restaurant. She reached out to me and we talked. The working title for Alison on Dominick Street at that time was Alison on Bank Street, which was a decidedly more favorable location because West Village, foot traffic, la-di-da.
Yep.
So when it became Alison on Dominick Street and she took me down there, I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. You got to be kidding me.
Was she confident?
We were both confident.
Okay. No, I mean about that specific look. When you said you had to be kidding me, what was her attitude toward that space?
She was like, Tommy, it'll be fine. It was kind of that if we build it, they will come kind of confidence, which is what I've always loved about her. So then that's what happened. We had a great architectural design firm, As for Guzzi, who built the restaurant in a very delicious and elegant fashion. I put my first menu together and yes, lo and behold, was braised lamb shank with white bean puree, roasted tomato, and Alison's first comment was, oh, Tommy, please. Really? Can't we just do steak frites? I said, trust me.
Okay, so she had the instinct for the real estate. What was your instinct about the food? Why did you know? What was it about the moment that you thought that would connect?
She and I talked a lot about the foods that we loved. A lot of it came back to, I guess it's southwestern French, Gascony, the Languedoc region. I think that's kind of that area. Lusty, rich, empty the bowl and you got to rub the last bits of bread into what's left at the bottom. That kind of feeling, and I had it in me because I wanted to, I was young and still wanted to show off a little bit.
In your way. Here's what I can do. Here's how good I can make food taste.
Like that. I mean, and yes, there was some design on the plate. There was some of that here and there, but at the base of it all was that type of foundation cooking, slow cooking type of approach.
I mean, your stuff to me, there's that classic line to under promise, over deliver. To me, I just remember having you, because I lived when you were at Cascabel and I represented it as a marketing guy.
Right.
I lived walking distance. And I would,
Yeah.
do you remember this? I would call up sometimes. And my roommates, I lived with my friend Dave and his girlfriend at the time, Rachel, and we would call up and say, can we be the last ticket in? And we would come over at like 9:45, 9:50, like on a weeknight, pig out, drink, and we would just be at the end of the meal, just like leaning back in our chairs, just literally just moaning with pleasure. And at that point, I still remember this so vividly. You were doing a tomato thyme risotto.
Oh my God, yes.
And little baby artichokes that you stood up. It looked like a Star Trek set when it came out. Yeah,
Oh
it
my
looked like
gosh.
another like planetary.
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about.
I remember.
And the lamb shank. And when you took that first bite, nothing prepared you for that. And it was a braised lamb shank. I mean, it's not like you have your little tricks that they're in the books we worked on.
Right.
You sneak little bit of distilled white vinegar into a lot of your bases, which keeps them from getting too heavy.
Yeah.
I think that's where the value of you doing it yourself every day came from.
I've always been an impatient cook.
How do you mean
I
that?
always want results quickly.
Yeah.
Even in long, slow cooking applications.
I mean, you want to be able to taste it as you're building it.
Yes.
Okay.
And so consequently, I found taught myself these techniques to round something out very early on in the cooking process by way of salt, sugar, acid, like that. Yes, the white vinegar is something that I reach for everywhere. There's a certain brightness it brings without being committed to a flavor of citrus or
Other things that would bring
red
acid.
wine vinegar, sherry vinegar.
No, it's unplaceable. Just so I'm clear with people who are listening, when we say you put some white vinegar in, I mean, this is what there are moments when I'm cooking and I think of you, and this is the moment. I have some mirepoix going with a little olive oil.
Right.
I add a little tomato paste. I'm stirring it, and the veggies are just barely coated with that paste, and I'm sort of cooking the rawness out of the paste.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the moment. And that's and then if I hit it with, to me, the way I would describe in general, the way you would add like distilled white vinegar, it was like a little capful.
Yeah.
That little shallow cap that's on a white vinegar bottle,
That's
right?
it.
That's it. Like not even maybe a teaspoon.
Yeah. It was also what I loved about the style in general is that you could eat a lot of it and quite often not feel like you ate a lot of it because there was a distinct absence of butter and cream. It's always been, as much as I loved that classic French cooking, a lot of the time, and particularly at Ouest with the neighborhood joint, is that I made a point of avoiding the butters and creams. Reason being is that I didn't want to create a neighborhood restaurant where people would go, God, that was really good, but I can't do that again anytime soon.
Right.
I wanted them to say, wow, that was really good. And I don't feel like I ate a bowling ball. And I want them to feel good because they'll come back again and again and again.
I think we're going to have to continue this. There's too much.
We could do that. There's so much more. All right.
I want to ask you one question before I go.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to lose it. We got past it chronology-wise.
Yeah.
It comes up a lot when I talk to people about the idea of private chefing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people now are going from restaurant kitchens to private chefing because it's a more humane life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you had a job in your formative years as a cook.
Mm-hmm.
You were a private chef to somebody.
Yeah.
What was the mandate? Because I love this.
When I was hired,
Where was this, in Connecticut?
this was in Harrison, New York, Westchester County.
Okay.
The fellow that I was hired by, Liam, is to this day one of my dearest friends.
Mm-hmm.
I love him dearly. Back at the time when I first interviewed with him, I was fresh into Westchester County. I was still actually living in Ithaca, New York.
Oh my God.
And we sat down. He started asking me questions like, have you ever been to Lutèce? And I said, what's a Lutèce?
Yeah. That was the gold standard French restaurant
That's right,
where Andre
at the time.
Salter was the chef and owner eventually for decades.
And then another question was, have you ever heard of the quilted giraffe? Barry and Susan Wine.
Yep.
And I was like, no, I may have had one in my crib when I was a baby.
Right.
But his interest in food and wine at the time was great. And he understood somehow that I had, with just a couple of years of experience,
Yeah.
some abilities. The only caveat of the job was I had to not repeat myself over 200 dishes.
Yep.
So it was roughly 3 months. If I made pasta fazool one Tuesday, you have to wait 3 months until he saw it again. So it was a great tool.
Well, for somebody wired like you,
Oh my God.
because that wasn't stressful for you. That was like a playground for you.
It was a playground, but it was all, yes, but there were moments when I would
Run out of stuff.
sit up, in a cold sweat in the middle of the night. Like, I've done everything I can with a scallop. What the hell am I going to do now?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it gave me a foundation of and
Amazing.
variety.
Yeah. Now, I'm assuming secretly you were probably finding some kind of matrix in your head, instinctually,
Yeah.
to cook things that pleased you as a cook and probably as an eater,
Right.
that would also meet what you would start, the understanding of what he liked
Uh-huh.
that you developed over
Yeah.
time, right?
Mhm.
So you had a customer and
Yeah.
you were developing your own repertoire.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a restaurant in a way with a daily changing
yes.
menu. It's just you only had one diner.
Well, I had two diners.
Two diners.
But the reality is that, as his friends caught on, they would make their way up to his house on the weekends quite often, and it would become little dinner parties, and it would become requests of that dish. Can we get that scallop dish that we had, a couple of weeks or a couple of months ago? And it became like that, where it would become multi-coursed dinners.
Yep.
So yeah,
So
I mean,
great.
it was fabulous, and
It's a good
Lee-
job, right?
it
For
was a
someone
great
coming up.
job. Oh my God! And Liam had a book, a hardcover.
Yeah.
It was called The Great Chefs of France.
Oh, sure.
And it was Trois Gros Brothers. It was Jacques Pic. It was Alain Saint-Laurent.
Chapelle.
It was Alain Chapelle.
That
Paul
book
Bocuse.
is about all of the, at the time, 3-star Michelin restaurants outside of Paris.
That's right.
No Parisian restaurants in the book.
That's right.
These places that, again, and taking it literally, what Michelin meant.
That's right.
These places that very often were like the main reason for a town existing.
That book had tremendous impact
Yeah.
on me. If you
Yeah.
look at that country style French,
Yeah.
which a lot of those places were, by the way.
Yes.
Outier and Naples was maybe a little different,
Yeah.
but a lot of those, the Bocuse is like, if you look at so
Yeah.
many of those Lyonnaise
Yeah.
style dishes, those are homespun, man.
Well, and even if you've ever read or seen interviews with the late Judy Rogers, right, who spent time with the Trois Gros family.
Who I loved.
But a lot of people, and Jonathan Waxman talks this way, the Trois Gros family was probably the least, for lack of a better word, pretentious 3-star Michelin restaurant. Their
Right.
restaurant was, people talk about it that way. There was an element of hominess
Right.
about it
Right.
within the framework
Yeah.
of that kind of restaurant. We got to stop, but I'm going
Let's
to
do
come back
more.
with,
All right, because there's more about that book.
and I will bring my copy. We'll go through the book.
I can still see the dishes.
Oh.
I can still see the dishes.
I remember interviewing David Kinch, and he slept with that book on his nightstand.
Oh.
David Kinch,
Oh yeah.
and that he, had all the menus memorized
oh yeah.
because there
me
was all
too.
kinds of stuff, kitchen diagrams and menus,
All of
and-
that shit.
But he was. There's an entire generation.
Yeah.
People, it's hard to understand now. There was no internet. Chefs even weren't even really written about in the U.S. That book was published in '78, and there's a whole generation for whom that was the chat
Oh
room.
my God! It was
Yeah.
like, for me, it was like, that's where, as an astronaut, the planet I had to go to.
All right, we'll pick up there.
Cool.
All right, thank you. Thanks for lunch.
Easy.